What's going on, everybody?
What's up, Dave?
What up, Brian? See T Wit's in here too. Gators Breakdown Plus chat going on tonight. Decided to chat it up with the schedule getting released today. All but one game. We kind of know the start times too, so plenty to get into on that front. We'll talk a little bit of recruiting too. Been a while since we've gotten together on recruiting in a chat form, so we'll discuss that too and anything else you guys want to talk about. But I kind of definitely wanted to plan a chat around the schedule. Big news of the day, so exciting time. I mean, we know no noon game for the Gators, so at least at home. Don't think Miami will be one either. So
Good.
yeah. What y'all been up to?
Working and kids, summertime, some kids out of school.
Yeah.
I mean, and then, getting ready for football season in a month. We start practicing, so.
Yeah.
At least at the youth level, at our level.
Gotcha.
Level.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're starting to get a lot more football talk too, though. I know. Does seem like on a national scale. ESPN putting out their FPI and a lot of talk about that. The preseason magazines are on the shelves. We already know with the Read and Reaction one out there. And I've got my Athlon and my Lindy. Still waiting on the Lindy's SEC edition, but the national versions of the Athlon magazine and Lindy's are already out. Got the Lindy's today. So we'll be diving into those soon. In a couple of weeks, me and Will will take a look at them. Take a look at those ever so popular coaches, anonymous coaches' thoughts on the teams out there. But plenty to get into as far as that. But yeah, you're right. It's summertime and it's ramping up. I can tell it here in the Discord too, that the conversations about the team and especially with the schedule release too, kind of helping out here. But yeah, it's not too much longer.
June and July are always really good months for recruiting anyway. Those are your biggest months.
Yeah, pretty much now. Those are. It's so crazy. I mean, of course, it's not over with by any means, but June and July are what January, February used to be. I mean, it's a lot of guys are making their decisions so early now. They're not making them around signing day. So, granted, you still get the flurry in the fall and all that, but as far as just like number of decisions and the way to cover it, it seems like June and July, June may actually be bigger than, going into December, basically.
When does fall camp start? Like a week or two after media days?
Yeah, it should be that week. The last week of July heading into August, I would assume that should be the week.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Like I said, at the youth level, we start like July 16th. So probably 1 week before college starts.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's what we were, debating on the Independent Gator Media Day that we announced. We were like, because I'm on vacation the week of SEC Media Days. And then we were like, well, when can we do it? We didn't want to do it the weekend after that. And trying to get everything together kind of fast. So we're holding it July 27th, our Independent Gator Media Day presented by the Sachs Law Group. And we were like, well, that might be the Sunday before fall camp starts, the Sunday that we're hosting it. So that's what we think. So it should be that last week of July heading into August. All right.
That Independent Media Day. Isn't that kind of like what y'all used to do, where everybody got together and all the different
kind
media
of
outlets?
Yeah, kind
like
of, but
and Stadium and Gale and I can't even remember who else was involved it was a few years ago when y'all did it.
Yeah, we had a lot of the national guys on with us, the on three, or not on three, but even around then, the 24/7 sports guys and some of the other media out there. But now this is a much bigger deal. We will do the same thing, but we'll do it in a in-person format. We'll go find ways to stream it as well. But me, the guys from Hot Top, the guys from Stadium and Gale, we're all going to get together at First Magnitude Brewing there in Gainesville. So we're going to do like a live media panel, kind of the panel that you're talking about. We're trying to get some special guests to go along with us. Get with Florida Victoria, see if they can help us out with some players. Get with the university, see if they can help us out with some players. We'll do a Q&A, all that kind of stuff. So kind of a meet and greet, talking football, like I said. But we will have a little section where you'll get the kind of Gator panel that you used to get back in the day.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, excited for that. All right. Gators Breakdown Plus, I'll put this chat out there for everybody. If you want to take part in chats like these, link is in the description to join Gators Breakdown Plus. Access to the Discord, access to chats like these, all that good stuff. As I said, especially the recruiting channel right now, as we were just discussing, pretty hot. But the talk of today and the hot topic is the Gators 2025 schedule. I put it up there if you're watching the YouTube version later on. We already knew the first 3 games: Long Island, USF, at LSU. We already knew those game times and the Georgia kickoff time, of course, as well. Long Island, 7 p.m. That's the season opener. USF the very next week, 4:15. And then we all figured it would come along this way because it really is the biggest game in week 3. It's early enough in the season where it's still going to be a big game. It really matter what happens week 1 to LSU and Clemson, but at LSU in Baton Rouge, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. We already knew that. But then the rest of the schedule came out. And then it's mostly SEC versus SEC matchups that they were able to give times for, or the SEC teams hosting an out-of-conference opponent. So if it's played in the SEC stadium, you got a time window released today. There are options with this. Of course, it's you got a noon, your afternoon, and night games. So for the flex, a flex game can start anywhere from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon window, or 6 to 8 p.m. And in the afternoon window, that is 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. Florida has one designation for that. So we'll go through it. Already mentioned the first 3 games. The one we don't know a time window for, at Miami, that is to be determined. We will see. I would assume it's an afternoon or a night game. So with that, Florida probably won't play a noon game this year. And then after Miami, you have a bye week. And then starts the flex options for Florida. I figured it was still early enough in the season where Florida and Texas would be considered a night game already. It is not. Florida-Texas will be a flex game. I'd still think it would be a night game. At Texas A&M the very next week, that's October 11th. That's a flex game as well. October 18th, Mississippi State's got the afternoon designation, so anywhere from 3:30 to 4:30. Then another bye week on October 25th. November 1st, we already know, Georgia in Jacksonville at 3:30. And then the last 4 games of the season, at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, hosting Tennessee, hosting Florida State, all have the flex option. So, and the reason they're doing this, and they talked about this in the broadcast, it is to help fans. So now you know if it's an afternoon game, you don't necessarily have to come in the night before, so you don't need that hotel room for Friday night. You might need it on Saturday night. So it's to help fans plan better. But with those flex games, we should know within a 6 to 12 day window of when those flex games will be announced. So interesting the way it broke out. Some of this is Florida being a polarizing team this year, being a more popular team this year, being a better team this year, and the opponents as well. That means some big games. But what you got to also keep in mind is this. What people, I think, seem to lose in the TV world is noon designations being a bad thing. It's not always the case. A noon game on ESPN is still going to draw more eyeballs than a primetime game on SEC Network. ESPN's in more households than the SEC network. Even if it's prime time, it don't matter. A noon game is still in higher regard. A noon game on ESPN or ABC, it's still in higher regard than a primetime game on SEC network. So from the fan perspective, you don't really care about that. If you want a night game, you want a night game. You want to be in the stands in that night game atmosphere. But from a TV perspective, how most people watch the games, it's so you still got to look at noon games being in better in the hierarchy. But for Florida, for the way it plays out most of the time, it is put the big name teams that we think are going to be good in a more in a more advantageous time slot. And you can see it here. It really bore out that way, where Florida's going to be in a lot of afternoon night matchups. But I think we were not surprised at all when LSU was announced as a night game a few weeks ago. It's going to be interesting what happens.
Dave, that was
Dave,
that was an incredible synopsis of that schedule. I'm not gonna lie.
Good deal. If we got a really good looking graphic to go along with it. I was hard at work on that today. So, it's really going to be interesting at those last two home games of the season, Tennessee and Florida State back to back. What is Tennessee going to be by November 22nd, the next to last week of the season? What is Florida State going to be the last game of the season? How's that going to factor into afternoon, nighttime windows? But at Ole Miss, their revenge game a little bit, from last season. That game's already that was a noon game last year in the Swamp. So now already designated to be an afternoon or a night game there in Oxford. And look, Harmonic Woods, shout out to them. That is the road trip game this year. Going to Oxford, going to the Grove, going to Ole Miss, and they were hoping, wishing, praying that it wasn't going to be a noon kickoff. That's what they got last year against Texas when that was their road trip. So a little more tailgate time. The people in Oxford will get to see a Harmonic Woods tailgate for a little bit longer this year. But certainly, I think if you're making that trip, it's better that it's not a noon game there. But I don't think anything really surprising except for just the amount of games that we already know that Florida's not going to be playing a noon game.
Like I said earlier, that's really good, especially for dads who have kids who play football and their games don't get over until 12, 1, 2 o'clock.
That's a good point.
It works out. Yeah, that's the only reason. I mean, if we don't have football, which is only towards the end of the season, I don't mind the noon game. I mean, if I'm watching it from home. Now, at the game, I don't really like the noon games. They're harder to get to for me. I pretty much have to come the night before just 'cause I'm 4 hours away. There's just not as much time to tailgate and, do the fun stuff. Plus, some people do. Me particularly, I'm not a big fan of drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's just not my thing.
It is as a look at it, and I always view it fan first. So fan first, give me the afternoon, give me the night games. I will say as a podcaster, noon games are awesome. Get a little more time for some prep afterwards. Get to watch more games as well. With those noon games, but it's a catch-22, so it makes it where it doesn't really matter to me. There's an advantage because I like tailgating as well. I love tailgating with Harmonic Woods and interacting with all the listeners and meeting people. You get to do that a whole lot more, a lot better when there's the afternoon and the night games. So certainly there's an advantage either way coming from my perspective. But if you're asking me to choose, I'll still choose the afternoon and night games. But those call for some early mornings and some late drives back to Jacksonville.
You're getting soft, Dave.
I am.
You're like all the big time media guys. You want that. They all say they want that noon game.
Hey, and I'll say the only reason I do, if I lived locally in Gainesville, I really wouldn't care. Like it's mainly just because I got to drive back to
Oh
Jacksonville.
yeah, those guys have nothing to complain about.
Right,
Give me a break.
Right, exactly. If I was in Gainesville, man, give me every night game. I could care less then. It's just a drive back to Jacksonville.
Oh no, I definitely get it being down here in Tampa, or south of Tampa, actually.
Yeah, especially if I want to do a show. But I did like it last year. As much as I can, I will do it this year too. And maybe it'll be every home game. But when I went live from in the stadium after the Ole Miss game, that was fun. That was cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I want to do that again. I want to do that pretty much every home game. But now I'm like, well, if I do that and it's a night game, probably not even going live till around midnight. So I'm not even leaving the stadium till around 1 o'clock. Getting back to Jacksonville around 3. So it's gonna be late. It's gonna be late.
Yeah, that's tough. But I do like those instant reactions. I liked it when you did that last year. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the one you did when you had the stadium background.
Yeah,
while you were up there in the press box. That was excellent.
Yeah, that was the Ole Miss game. You know, we were caught up in all the excitement. You got that big win. It was the last home game of the season, but it worked out too. I had always wanted to do that anyway, and that being a noon game, it gave me a little bit more time to kind of figure things out. I was like, well, if it won't work, I can still go home and do the episode. But I was like, if it'd work, this would be cool. I did it. It was cool. And it's something I'm definitely going to do more of. Like I said, I want to do it every home game. So that's the plan. Anything else about the schedule, guys, that stood out to you? I mean, I know nothing really earth-shattering about it, but...
Is it too early to give your prediction?
Yeah, I'm gonna save that till right around before the season. I think I do have my mind made up. I do go back and forth a little bit. The LSU game, the Texas game, Georgia game. Those are the ones I think you look at, and you know those are the big time toss ups or your underdogs. And then it's what other games? You know, there's always that sneak up game that's going to be tough that you're going to have to overcome. So, you know, at Texas A&M's not going to be easy either the week after hosting Texas. So, yeah, I do go back and forth a little bit. But, prediction to come sometime in late August.
Do you think 4 losses will get you into the playoffs this year?
4 losses? No. I just...
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't see... Unless absolute chaos ensues, I have a hard time seeing that. Especially a year after we didn't see any 9-3 SEC team getting in.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at. I think 9-3. Excuse me, 9-3 needs to be the bare minimum. Like the worst you can do.
Yeah. For
this to be considered a good season. I mean, I'm not going to say 8-4 is not a bad season by no means, but where we're at year 4 with all the, you know, the DJ Lagway and all the returning talent and the way that we've, you know, kind of retained our players instead of going out and getting more. I mean, this is the year. So we've all said that. You know, it's nothing new.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have built for this moment. You built for this year, and a lot of people will say, and kind of extending that, Ryan, it is, and I don't want to, you know, I don't want to poo-poo on next year because, you know, people, I think when you look at it as, well, this is the year to strike because you lose so much for next year. Well, I get that thought, and I do agree with it to some extent, but shouldn't another year of Lagway and all these offensive weapons be better next year as well?
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I guess the way I look at it is we haven't been super aggressive in the portal, so losing a lot of players, especially the 2 offensive linemen. I'll be the first one to admit that I didn't give Sale very much credit his first couple of years, but I've come around on him. He's done a pretty good job of taking, you know, the developmental players and turning them out pretty good. So that's my biggest worry is losing those players. How are we going to replace them? I mean,
yeah.
If we just replace them with young guys, they're going to still need more experience. And I mean, still learning.
Yeah. Hey, T-Wick, can you mute your mic, please, if you're not going to speak?
But, I'm not worried about 26 right now. I'm worried about 25.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That is pretty much the thing there.
I think next year our skill players will be better, but the trenches will be worse.
There you go. Yep. That's where I was going to go next.
Well,
I was going to go to the defensive side of the ball too.
You can reload for 26. If 25 is successful, we should be able to reload.
And you might even have an even more expanded playoff in 26.
Oh my Lord!
Yay!
Yay! That's right.
It's constantly like participation trophy every year.
Are you a fan of the expanded playoff, Dave?
No, I'm not. Now, in the way Josh Pate explained it on his show not long ago, a 14-team format where you have that conference championship play-in weekend, and you actually do have automatic qualifiers. That's about the only way automatic qualifiers I think is good and can work. You have your automatic qualifiers off of that weekend. I think 1 plays 2, and then you have 3 play 6 and 4 play 5. And it broke out. I think that's 3 automatic qualifiers for the SEC and the Big Ten. So that gives you 6 teams. Then you figure out 8 along the way, 8 more. I think 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12. Notre Dame. Yeah, whatever way you can make it where. I think losers of that conference championship game play in. If there's one at-large spot at the end of the year, okay, but it needs to be very limited. You need to play your way in. So it's and put it this way, it's probably going to get expanded in a way where it does put the emphasis on the regular season. It does put the emphasis on that conference championship play-in weekend. We don't need to be going into that weekend. You have play-in games, and there's so many at-large bids where losers of that game don't get punished. So, you just got to make games matter somehow more.
Yeah, and the SEC championship game, and it's maybe just because I'm older, has always been meaningful to me personally. Like I like going to the SEC championship game and winning the SEC championship. I mean, it's a
big game.
It's a tough conference. I mean, winning it says something. Even if you don't go on to win the national championship, at least you'd have that SEC championship to fall back on.
Yeah, and you still get the 4. My bad. You still get 4 auto bids. I said 3. I think 1 and 2 who play in the SEC championship game, you're playing for the bye, and then 2 still gets in. No matter if they lose or not. But the losers of 3 versus 6 and the loser of 4 versus 5 do not get into the playoff. I think you got to put some emphasis there.
I didn't mind how they did it last year. I just hated that they were guaranteed a top 4 seed. That was the thing that if they would have just reseeded by like how basketball does it. If you win, you can get in, but if you barely scraped in or made a run at the end, you get a low seed, but you still get in.
Right. But it's happening. I'm just trying to find ways to make it better, make it more acceptable.
Yeah, it's not done changing.
Yeah.
It's only going to grow.
Yeah.
We're going to play more conference games in the future. I mean,
it doesn't do any good to complain about it. Just find ways to make it better.
Just follow the money.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So unfortunately, Dave, like figuring out the quickest, easiest way to game the system and the rules that we are given has not been our strong point most recently.
I think you are right about that, but at the same time, I think they have been kind of planning for what has happened as far as the latest announcements for the revenue share and stuff. Like, I think that has been a lot of, at least in the early stages of NIL and collectives and all that stuff, something that maybe I thought they think would have happened faster. And we now finally got to that point. I do think kind of behind the scenes, that's what they had been aiming for anyway. So I do agree with your point that they probably should have adapted in some ways faster in those regards. But I do think this was always the end goal of that. So I'm hoping that means they're fully prepared, ready to go for this situation. Because I do think this is what they were waiting on. If that makes sense.
So like a slow play approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Safe approach. Slow and steady. That's UF. Always has been.
I don't know if I call the Rashada incident safe, but
Yeah, that's true too.
No, what the heck? Like, we still don't have any news on this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. One more thing about the schedule, and then we can move on. We can talk a little bit of recruiting or whatever. I wanted to give the flex options for the other game, for the flex games. For Texas, Florida hosting Texas was a flex. The other game that they will be deciding on is Bama and Vanderbilt. That's why I thought that would be a night game already, but okay. The very next week, when the Florida at Texas A&M game is a flex, you can understand it this week. South Carolina at LSU and Arkansas at Tennessee are the other flex games. When the flex game is at Kentucky, it is Texas A&M at Missouri as the other flex game. Florida at Ole Miss is a flex game. The other games that day, you completely understand. Oklahoma at Alabama and Texas at Georgia. Tennessee's a flex game, of course. Again, the other game that Florida will be in competition for the flex is Arkansas at Texas. And then, of course, the season ender, you understand it completely here. Florida State is a flex. The other games, Bama at Auburn and LSU at Oklahoma. So there's your flex options. So you can see why some of those do make sense. But, I mean, come on. To me, it's still early enough in the season. It's Florida, Texas. It's brand names. It's big games. I would say if Florida beats LSU, it probably, no matter what happens against Miami, it probably cements Texas being a night game. But there's your layout for those flex games.
That
Texas
tells
was
me
a noon game last year, wasn't it?
Which one?
Texas wasn't a noon game last year?
Yeah, at Texas, yep.
I think they still don't know how good we're going to be. That's why they're not. That's why they're trying to.
Yeah, I can see that.
Their bets on Vegas isn't big on us.
Yeah, I mean I can see that, but Bama versus Vanderbilt being the only other flex game.
A lot of the same money going on there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have this in front of you, but I feel like we play better at night. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just scarred from Texas last year, but.
Well, Ole Miss was a noon game too. Let's see. I think LSU was a 3:30 game. It ended at night. Time had changed by then, but I believe that was a 3:30 game. Miami was a 3:30 game. Got shellacked. I believe A&M was a 3:30 game too.
Tennessee was night.
Tennessee was night. Yep. In Knoxville. Yep.
Maybe it's just, I remember the Utah game was that night.
Yeah.
That we won.
Yeah. Mississippi State last year, I think, was a noon game on the road.
CF was night.
Yep. Kentucky last year, was that a night game too?
It finished that night, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember. There we go. There's your schedule, 2025 schedule. Well, I don't know when the ACC is going to announce the Florida-Miami game kickoff, but I would assume pretty soon. And I can update the graphic one more time. Anything recruiting you guys want to talk about? on the run of recent commits. Everybody's got my thoughts on them on the last few episodes, but we knew the names would come, and the names have came.
Puts my heart at ease, Dave.
A lot of size this week. A lot of size at offensive tackle, tight end.
I love that tackle.
Yeah. Tell you what, I'm a bit, and you probably could tell from the episode.
We've known they've had a type, on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And they stick to it. And I can't remember who was saying it earlier. Maybe Ryan. Like they have, we can actually look at some development. It's a year ago today. We weren't so sure, and I think we are kind of comfortable with the way that the offensive line is being coached, being recruited, and all that stuff. There just seems to be a lot more stability in that spot. Like we haven't even seen. How long has it been, Dave? I don't know.
What? How long for what?
For a stable offensive line.
Oh,
like not have to worry about that going into the season.
Oh yeah, that's been quite some time for sure.
Yeah, been a long time. Because they don't grow on trees, but I guess if you stick to a type and you stick to I guess Rob Sale, he's proved me wrong. He's proved a lot of people wrong. And
I still think this year goes a long way. I still think this year goes a long way in that now.
Say that again, Dave?
I still think this year goes a long way in that.
Oh, proving it again?
Well, yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong. 4 or 5 returning, and
my point was they have a size, and we're recruiting to it, and it looks good right now, and it just seems like a position group we haven't had like stability at in a long time.
Yeah, there's definitely stability there. I will say there's still another level for this group to get, and I think the way you're going to get there is by returning 4 or 5 guys. But they do have to get more consistent in the pass blocking area. I think they were a really good run blocking unit as the year went on. Pass blocking, it was still Lagway making some exceptional getaways against LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State. And those guys did their. I mean, I think those guys played better, especially much better than they did against Miami and Texas A&M earlier in the year. But I do think more strides were made in the run blocking area than I do in the pass blocking area. So I think if Florida's going to be fighting for a spot in Atlanta, fighting for a spot in the college football playoff, I do think the offensive line with 4 or 5 guys returning have to take another step in pass blocking.
I don't think there's any reason they won't.
Yeah, I mean this is what that's what it's setting up for. And I think that's why you're glad 4 or 5 guys are returning. That's what you should be getting in that.
A healthy DJ Lagway might help that too.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I've kind of come around on the O-line recruiting. I thought at first when we were bringing in all those 3 stars, I thought it's just because we were missing, which I'm sure we were missing on a lot of the 5 stars too. But when you look at the budget you're kind of dealing with now and how offensive linemen, like it's pretty rare to have them come in as a freshman ready to go. And then when you got other guys that are coming back that are already going to have the spot filled, you kind of have to take this approach at O-line. I feel like that position is more developmental than any position,
Yeah, if development's going to be your calling card, then this is when we should see it. When you got 4 or 5 guys returning and they've played a lot of football together, if development's going to be your calling card, that step that I'm talking about taking needs to be there. That's what we need to see this fall. And going to your point, I mean, there is a clear. We know they've missed on offensive linemen, 5-star offensive linemen that end up going to Miami. We know that, but I do think besides or outside of that, you're right. You can tell there's a clear plan there, and I mean, size is one thing. I mean, they go, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. There is a mold there. And a lot of it does seem to be guys that are very athletic, guys that have a basketball background, guys that have another, track and field background, guys that are versatile, guys that can move around. They do have a type at offensive line that they like.
And
you
coach
think those type? Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying you can't coach that.
Yeah, I was going to say you think that those type, the athleticism they look for, that would be a help in pass blocking. Quicker feet.
Yeah.
I don't
know. Recent recruiting news, and we've been talking about it on the recruiting channel on the Discord. Valdon Sonnet, the defensive lineman, does look like he's going to visit Georgia instead of Florida this weekend. There was a mix-up where he couldn't make it to Georgia last weekend. So I think the plan was he was going to try and shift everything a week, but Florida's not doing official visits next week. Looks like the trip to Georgia is still going to happen. He's been mocked in Florida's class along the defensive line, 4-star there for along the defensive line from the state of Virginia. But Florida looking good. But just I do wonder, an official to Georgia, I assume one's going to happen to Florida at some point. I don't know of a commitment timeline from him or anything. We'll get into some of that in just a second. But you'd have loved to keep it, and he visit Florida this weekend when some other guys or a lot of guys are on campus this weekend too. But that's kind of the big news, is one of Florida's top targets, one thought many people were feeling great about, not going to take an official this weekend. Hopefully.
Hey, Dave.
Not bad news.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I heard Corey Knowles talking about how he saw or he was told what the recruiting board is. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Not so much this year. I have seen what he's talking about before in past classes. Like there's a room, and it looks like a draft board. I mean, it's got guys labeled, and they got guys labeled elite, and who they think is elite, and who they want to go and get after. It doesn't match the recruiting services all the time. If you're talking about specific for this year, a little bit. Now there have been years where I've seen the whole daggum thing, so this year is not one of those years. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if there's really earth shattering things there, even if it got out. It's I don't think it's any secret from opponents or rival teams out there too much about who Florida's going after.
It does seem like Billy tries to be pretty secretive at times about who's visiting when and what. There does seem to be a level of secrecy about it. So
I mean, maybe when guys visit for sure. As far as who they're actually targeting, I don't think that's a huge big secret.
Is that because they're all just targeting the same guys?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. There you go. It's funny how recruiting services, that's why they're accurate. I mean, it's not a science that, they're not. It's not brain surgery for these recruiting services. As we like to say, follow the visits. I mean, you might be a little bit behind the 8 ball, but when you start following visits, you can put your own recruiting service together. And you're gonna be pretty successful in labeling guys 5-star, 4 stars, and 3 stars. As far as guys visiting this weekend, Caden Perthrow, 5-star tight end. I think that's a Georgia-Bama battle. We talked tight end a little bit on the episode of Gators Breakdown earlier. Of course, Florida just getting one, of course, and Kakua Amua there from IMG there. But Florida certainly wants more than one tight end. Defensive lineman James Johnson from Miami. I know Florida was in a little better shape earlier on that one. Not so much lately, I don't think. 4-star wide receiver Davian Gross, Isaiah Williams, former linebacker commit, Ole Miss commit. Apparently will be on campus this weekend. We will see if that happens. 4-star edge from Pensacola, Trenton Henderson, the one to keep an eye on there, will be on campus. Kendall Guerville, as well. 4-star defensive lineman. Certainly one to keep an eye on as far as a potential commitment there for the Gators at some point. Wide receiver Marquez Daniel seems to be an Auburn-Florida battle. He'll be on campus. Linebacker target Malik Morris from Lakeland, of course. We discussed him at length, especially when Isaiah Williams decommitted from Florida. But even before that, a name that we've been certainly told to watch and be on the lookout for. Will Griffin, 4-star quarterback. He'll be on campus, along with offensive lineman Chris Booker, tight end Carson Sneed, interior offensive lineman Desmond Green, and offensive tackle Tyler Chukium. I hope I'm saying that right, from Georgia. He says Florida is really, really heavy after him. And he says in recent interviews, 6'6", 290 there from Georgia. So another offensive lineman on three's own rankings, not the industry ranking, but their sole rankings has him as a 4-star. 24/7 has him as a 3-star, so he's a 3-star on the industry ranking, but is a 4-star on all three's sole rankings. So another big visit weekend coming up, weeks after Florida's just been piling up commits. I think 5 commits in the last 10 days or so.
How many are we expecting to take this class?
That is a good question, man. I think the default
25.
I think the default answer to me is always
20.
going to be like 18 to 20 because you want to save room for the transfer portal.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the plan last year, and then they end up signing this huge big class. So
yeah, I like that approach much better because he hasn't been that aggressive in the transfer portal, so there ain't no use in saving him. He ended up giving those scholarships to walk on.
yes,
So,
I mean,
You can always make room. You can always make room.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured, though. 19, 20 kids.
I think that's
I
probably
think nowadays you always got to have a backup plan just in case
yeah.
things go left.
And then maybe, but hey, guys, that goes back to a previous point, though, doesn't it? Like we were skipping forward a little bit to 26 and about how much you retain this year and how many of those guys are going to be going on to the NFL next year. Does that mean you take a bigger portal class next year? So maybe the high school class is a little smaller this time because, hey, now we don't have as many guys to retain. Those guys that we did retain are now gone. Is the best way to make up for them through the transfer portal. But the plan from the staff, and they have been very, very forthcoming about it, is we're going to build through high school recruiting. So to me, it's hard to know. It really, to trenches, defensive line, I still think you got to go portal. And that's one position. And maybe offensive line because you lose you lose a good bit of guys, even some backups after this year. So in the trenches, I can see portal heavy just to get some instant impact guys in there. But everywhere else, I think it's going to be mostly high school guys. And maybe even offensive line too, because we just talked about the recruiting there and it being so developmental. That development may have it where they feel they don't need to hit the transfer portal hard. So it's going to be fascinating to me how they balance bringing or retaining so many guys this year, a small portal class, given what may happen to the roster after this season.
Hey, Dave, you got to think that the on-field results are going to have a huge swing this year for that. I mean, because if they break through, everybody's going to want in to play with Lagway for another year.
And pretty much what we saw last year, yeah.
Right. And I think the portal is going to have a direct relationship with that because if the boosters feel like they are in prime position for a run in year 4, regardless of who's leaving, they may want to try to surround Lagway with as much as they can to pop a title.
You read my mind. That's what I was. As soon as you kind of brought up your first point, I was like, "Oh yeah, that could mean the same thing for transfers. Guys who are looking for a place, maybe who haven't won a championship somewhere, and they are seeing that, hey, this might be my best chance. Let me go to Florida. They need help along the offensive line. They need help along the defensive line. I don't know about receiver. I can see receivers wanting to be so excited to go play with Lagway, but the way Florida's recruited there, if they retain some of those guys like a TJ Abrams and a Tank Hawkins who will be in their third years the next year if they break through next year to go along with the young guys Brown and Montgomery and Dallas Wilson. I mean, they may have to turn away good receivers who want to play with Lagway because of how they recruited there. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch, especially Bill, going to your point. If they have success this year, man, hey, that'd be a good problem to have.
Thanks for showing up late, Bill. I made that point earlier.
Whatever, dude, I'm old and tired.
But I've seen his name. He's been here for a little. He's been here for a little bit.
I'm gassed, man. I'm trying. Hey, I do have a question for you, Dave. Going back to the offensive line.
Uh-huh.
All right, so you got Barber at left tackle,
Yep.
Slaughter at center, and Lovett presumably at right tackle. Who are your guards?
Najee Harris still at left, and Damian George at right.
All right, so if that is the case, I would just like to point out that that's what, 2 high school recruits at this point starting in year 4 from Napier's offensive line recruiting.
Yeah.
And I don't say that as like a knock. I just say it as to clearly they got some good chemistry with this group. They got some good experience. They got some good development. But I think you have to separate, experience and recruiting from development. And so I think while the recruiting has certainly been better from a numbers and retention aspect so far, at least from these last 2 classes, retention was horrible early on. We just don't know yet if they can recruit a tackle. We don't know if they can consistently do so anyway. And so I think that verdict is just going to be out for another year or 2, honestly.
Yeah, that's why I said development is going to be your calling card. We may not know that. This year we'll get some of that because all the returning pieces, and they develop guys who, as you kind of to your point, that are not Napier recruits. But yeah, I think we'll get even more of that answer next year. You're right, because eventually. And Bill, here's a crazy stat that I heard. I'm so glad you brought that up because I was listening to Andy and Ari on 3, and they were talking about Tennessee. Josh Heupel is going into year 5. They are just now about to start their first Josh Heupel recruited offensive lineman.
Good gravy. I'm not impressed with that guy. Yeah, he's a great play caller, but I don't think University of Tennessee can compete in recruiting with Georgia and Ohio State and Alabama and Auburn surrounding him right now. I just don't think Tennessee's a serious player, but maybe they prove me wrong.
I think this year's a struggle for them.
Yeah, I do too.
They lost a lot. I think they were taking a step back anyway, even before all the Nico stuff. And then the Nico stuff happened. And I'm not calling him some great quarterback, but he was a returning piece from an offense that was losing a good bit. And now you got to put a new quarterback in that too. I think they take a big step back.
Good thing we get them late in the season now, Dave. We could have just wrote that one in, and now they get the whole season to figure this thing out.
I will take that, given that the transfer-heavy LSU and Miami teams we play early in the year.
Fair trade. Hey, going back to the offensive line, do you think the reason we don't recruit, especially tackles, that well is the price for a good tackle? It's kind of a high-paid player.
I think that's part of it.
Check out 247's recruiting rankings. There's no top tackles in Florida ever.
Do you think we just don't want to pay the money that?
I would say that's why we lost out to those big guys, Miami, a couple cycles ago. It was money.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if that's still the case. They've got their plan at offensive line is we can get them cheaper and develop them rather than paying a high price tag for them and like you said, not getting them. They're still going to be in the same system, so they're only going to get their 2 years of playing time after they learn for a couple of years.
And kind of unsolicited. That goes back to spring when Rob Sell, he brought it up unsolicited, talking about recruiting rankings. And yeah, we see there's guys that are rated 5 stars and basically saying, well, we don't see that. It was a direct shot at offensive line recruiting, but I do think that's more their viewpoint.
But the one we went and lost to Miami, he started his freshman year, didn't he? He started every year since.
Who was it? It was
I can't remember.
Mauangoa?
Yeah, one of them. I can't remember which one. But one of them.
And Pancake, right?
He's an IMG guy. We weren't getting him. We weren't getting those guys yet. Najee Harris was first. That was probably the same class, but we hadn't broke the seal.
Wasn't Josh Simmons from Ohio State one of their big targets a few years back too from Napier?
Transfer portal?
No, I'm talking
No.
about in recruiting. Let me look up his class. I can't remember which year he came out, but he worked out pretty well too. But that might
I
have
think
been
he
his
was a
first
Florida guy.
class.
He was from San Diego State, wasn't he? And he went to Ohio State or something.
Yeah, that's the guy I'm talking about. Yeah,
Let's see.
that was the guy I was thinking
Yeah,
of.
you might be right about that, actually.
I think they, like I was saying earlier, they see O-line as like this, like where they just don't look at it as a smart investment coming in, investing all that much money in a freshman. Just seems that way.
Speaking of offensive linemen, while we're on that topic, I did want to get Blake Alderman did a really good job of putting out a schedule for Florida Gator targets to announce commitments on June 16th. So we're about a week out. That's when Javari Lucas, 3-star offensive tackle, is going to make a decision. Probably Florida leads, not Tyler Chukium. I hope I'm saying his name right, or Chukium. He's making his decision on June 16th as well. So that's 2 3-star offensive tackles that were making their decision next week.
right along our point.
I am on vacation next week, by the way. So.
So it's solid. It's happening. Alderman was on Shane's show, and he said that. He said all that stuff you just said about his lineman.
July 1st, Jarayla McCoy.
Traction in round 3. Anyway.
Yeah. July 1st, Jarayla McCoy going to make his decision. We got the good news that he's not going to visit Texas this weekend. Going to be in Florida for an unofficial, back on campus again. So maybe he don't make it to July 1st, but 4-star defensive lineman. That's what you're looking at there. Looking good for Florida. Cornerback C.J. Hester. He's going to announce July 1st. So we'll see. He's still taking visits, but Florida leads for his services. So looking defensive back C.J. Hester there. 3-star wide receiver Brian Williams will make his decision on July 1st as well. And then July 2nd, Cedarian Morgan, who just raved about his recent Florida visit there. So we'll see. Alabama's viewed as the favorite. We'll see. Kind of mentioned on the podcast when we were talking about him. Yeah, he's still got some visits. It might be a visit high, putting Florida in his top 2. So we'll see where that one goes. 4-star defensive lineman Noah Clark will make his decision on July the 2nd as well. Still looking for a visit to Gainesville. And then July 5th, you get early July, guys. So many decisions being made. 5-star safety Jaire Edwards. I wouldn't necessarily think number 2 safety in on 3 industry rankings. I don't think Florida looking good there. 4-star wide receiver Calvin Russell. Another wide receiver since Florida just got Justin Williams to commit. We'll see about his decision. July 6th, cornerback Chauncey Kennan. Maybe a Florida State battle. They're heading into his July 6th commitment. July 12th, the one I'm really looking forward to, Heezy Kent, 4-star tight end out of Brunswick. I know some people want to call him an offensive tackle still, but we'll see. We'll see. He's still being recruited as a tight end. Big tight end. And then August 22nd, way down the road, Braylon Womack, the safety from Mississippi. Still think Ohio State probably going to be the pick there, but a really good relationship with Vinny Sinceri. Carson Baker, the running back, 4-star running back, if you follow social media, certainly has put it out there that he loves the Gators. I think coming, some Florida State talk recently, but Trayon Webb, you can tell they have a nice little relationship on social media. But Carson Baker maybe could pop at any time. And then some guys, these are guys that have hinted towards upcoming decisions. Carson Baker, the running back I just talked about. 4-star defensive lineman Bodney Cleveland, who Florida seems to be in good shape for, along with Texas. 4-star wide receiver Marquez Daniel. There's no date, but he's coming off an official visit to Auburn last weekend. It seems to be a Florida-Auburn battle. Samorian Wingo, the wide receiver from St. Augustine. Maybe an upcoming decision. Florida looking really, really, really good there. And then C.J. Bronan, a Nebraska commit, a cornerback. So we'll see how that one shakes out. I think Florida maybe waiting on some other names. So we'll see where that one goes. But as I said, early July, by the time July 6th, 7th gets around, July 12th, my bad, that's where Heezy Kent commits. By the time we get there, we're going to have a lot better idea of where this class is. A lot of big names making their decisions.
Well, good Lord, Dave. How the hell is anybody supposed to absorb all that?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, but so what's our number? Like, so come that time, you said what day? July
12th. That's when Heezy Kent makes his decision.
Okay.
So
I mean, do you have any feeling of where?
I mean, so say
we'd be
Javari,
at that point?
Yeah, just say Javari Lucas is one, that offensive tackle. This new guy, Tyler Chukium, I'm not really sure. So I'll leave that at 1 for now with Javari Lucas. And then Jarayla McCoy, July 1st. So that's 2. CJ Hester makes it 3.
You're going to have to throw in some randoms.
Maybe. I mean, Jaire Edwards.
Hey, you don't expect
the safety there. I don't think so. Calvin Russell, the receiver. I don't know about him. Okay, I'm only going to count guys I feel really good about. So I'm still at 3. Chauncey Kennan. I still don't know. Heezy Kent, I'm going to feel good about and put as number 4. Carson Baker, 5. He makes a decision soon. Bodney Cleveland, 6. So 6 names. So in the next maybe few weeks, maybe 5 to 6 more.
Good. That seems pretty good, but do you think we'll have like the same kind of situation where it went down to how are we doing at the end of the season and all of a sudden we make that final push to make sure we get over the edge? And is this a top 5 class?
I don't think it gets top 5. I think you've probably already taken more 3 stars to get there. I don't know.
Oh, that's right. You said on the pod there weren't a lot of 5 stars like that were really in it for.
Yeah, not for you.
Which one is the one 5-star that you were like circled back on?
I don't know. I have to go look at the list again.
I think Blue Orange Gator, he made a good point on Twitter on one good point. But no, about how it seems like the top 3, top 5 classes nowadays just comes down to who's invested the most money. But I mean, it's just the way it looks like from the outside in.
I can see that.
It makes a ton of sense too. Like if you think about like team needs, like sometimes you don't need that to overpay for that one player at that one position you into a situation where you're going to have that top 5.
I don't really buy that. I mean, money is a huge factor now, but I still think the good recruiters recruit. Like, I mean,
I was about to say, it's still a lot of the same schools, yeah.
Georgia was struggling with NIL, and they didn't struggle, having a good class. I mean, I still believe that, yes, money is a factor now, but it's still, I mean,
put it this way.
I think the recruiters recruit.
Yeah, I mean,
Kirby's grip is fading. They're not going to be like this.
Okay, but if I would have said this is the recruiting rankings in 2019 compared to last year's 2025, would you be surprised? Like, we wasn't talking money. We were because if it was under the table. But if 2019, I'm telling you the top 5 is Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, you wouldn't think any different than you did for that's the actual 2025 top 5. You wouldn't think any different.
Exactly.
And we weren't talking NIL back then. So yeah, don't get me wrong though. Here's the thing. I mean, we know those schools are spending. We know Texas is spending. So to put it this way, I think that can be true, but that pretty much is still the same teams. Like, it can be the reason, but I don't think that changes the outcome.
Still think it's the head coach at those schools. I mean, it comes down. That's to me, the head coach is the main recruiter, always has been. And they're good at it. They're going to get their players. Now, being at certain schools like Georgia, being the primary school in their state for a very, lucrative state for football players, Texas, Florida should be there too for the same reasons, but we're not. Those schools are always going to, as long as they got a good coach, then they're going to be good at recruiting. And then you got an excellent recruiter like a Kirby Smart or a, Nick Saban at Bama, then they're just going to be that much better. So
here's what I want to look at. I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad we brought this topic up. What I want to go back, and I need some time to do this, but talking to Will and Nick about roster construction and the way they put it in the Read Reaction magazine of how many teams are filled up of transfer portal takes and how much of your roster is transfer portal takes versus your high school recruiting. That gives a little bit of glimpse, but I'd like to go 4 classes back for every team in the SEC. And what is the percentage of your roster that are guys that signed with you in high school recruiting?
You trying to say we're overblowing it a little bit on recruiting? Like it's not as important anymore?
That's what I want to find out. If Georgia continues to win, but we know they've recruited well, but we also know at the same time a lot of guys have left. They're not stacking as much as they used to. Guys are going to other schools now. But some of their backups are now deciding to transfer. So that 4-star, that 5-star that waited their time, no longer waiting their time, does that make it now where your depth, instead of a developed 4 or 5-star guy, is now a true freshman 4 or 5-star guy because you've lost these many players? I'd like to go back and really look at Georgia's number 1 class 3 classes ago. How many of those guys are still left? Same for Alabama. Same for LSU.
It's less than half.
I think
it's just the margin of error. The margin for error is lessened,
Yeah.
And then, I think coaching and X and O stuff matters more because the talent's more dispersed evenly. So, that stuff is more of a factor now.
Yeah, it's my favorite saying. 2 things can be true at the same time. They could be taking a much bigger hit than they always have. That doesn't mean the result changes.
Yeah, they still won the SEC last year, so.
That's the other side of it is they could also be bringing in better quality of transfers to supplement.
Yeah,
It's just
right.
A lot of moving parts with all this for sure. A lot of questions that need to be answered.
Well, revenue sharing allows schools to put players like incoming freshmen into contracts, binding 2 or 3 year contracts, or is that not going to be a thing?
I don't know about the contract side of it.
Transfers.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think contracts don't really come into play until collective bargaining, I think. So why are they going to agree on anything, that's not...
I can help with that.
Yeah, why are they going to agree to something that's not collectively bargained? And going back to Josh Pate, he had this idea, but it was an idea I've kind of thought about too, but he's put it out on blast for everybody to hear. But what I think is an outstanding idea for moving forward with rev share and then trying to do some kind of collective bargaining where contracts do come into play. Look, transfer portal can still be open, but there is an incentive to stay with your program. You get so much money for year 1. You get so much money for year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 if you get 5 years. If you decide to transfer, that money starts over. So if you're in year 3 and you decide to transfer to another school, you go back to making year 1 money. There's an incentive to stay with your program. And if transferring is still your better option and you want more playing time, okay. But there's a pay hit that comes with it. Now that's going to have to be collected. That's going to be collectively bargained. That's going to have to be collectively bargained. Nobody's going to agree to nobody's going to agree to that, or nobody's going to sign a contract when they don't agree with something like that. And don't get me wrong, I know that's a big step, but maybe if there's so much money involved in the first place, maybe that's to get some kind of roster, stability. I love that idea. or something along that line. You know, maybe it doesn't completely start over, but maybe it's, you know, a certain percentage of what you would be making if you had stayed.
Hey, I actually do have a little bit of a unique perspective on this. Just keep in mind that before any of that structure comes into play, they have to collectively decide to collectively bargain by organizing. So, like, if they decide to unionize, that comes first, and then the entire structure of how the system works comes after through negotiation.
How long do you think something takes like that takes, Bill? That would take years, wouldn't it?
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because like from start to finish, from the time that they start moving to organize, you're talking about, and you're not just talking about 1, 5, 10, 15 schools. They got to do it nationwide. Then they got to come up with their own, you know, organization, and then they got to figure out who's going to be the other negotiating party, and then they got to sit down and hash it out, and then you're probably talking year and a half, 2 years there, and then they got to implement it the next year. So yeah, it's not going to be quick if it happens.
Hopefully, the sport won't be dead by then.
Yeah, hopefully.
It's hard.
Going back to what you said, Dave, that would help out a ton as far as the locker room too. Like you hear all these coaches complaining about how the freshmen have to come in, and some of them are making more money than the guys that have been there, but they kind of have to offer that because that's the going rate for the players. So it's like a catch-22.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL went through that. Guys would get drafted, quarterbacks would get drafted, and their contracts would be a lot more than established guys. But that's just what happened. And then they finally came up with, I forget the term for it, but they finally came up with the idea of, no, there's going to be a set limit for rookie contracts. And they can't pass this. You know, you get slotted contracts. That's what it was. You get a slotted contract. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's what's going to make a lot of sense in college football and roster management. Something like that needs to be there.
Yeah, I was going to say, that would require every team to kind of follow the same guidelines with paying players. You know, but they'd all have to be in kind of the same ballpark. For you to, if you're going to transfer to another team, then you've got to go back to year one money. That would require that other team to be paying around the same year one money that you were paying for it to, you know, really matter. Like as long as another team's year one money isn't the same as your year three money, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yep. Yeah, it's going to have to be collectively bargained where, you know, everything's equal.
You're talking nationally or just by conference? Could it be done just per conference, or would it have to be something like the NCAA?
I think it had to be overall? I think it would have to be levels, because say a player does drop down to a team in the Sun Belt. You know, there's probably going to have to be a different pay scale. But if he's transferring because he wants more playing time, now maybe that playing time is some other school in the SEC, but maybe it's not. Maybe he's not good enough. Maybe that 4-star didn't turn out as good as we thought, and now he's got to go to Tulane. Well, they can't pay what Florida, Alabama, and Georgia are paying. Interesting stuff for sure.
I think more coaches would be on board than you think. I think Pate described it one time. It's like everybody's going 95 on the interstate. You're trying to go 80, but it's like everybody's riding your bumper and everything. So it's like you kind of have to go 95 if you want to keep up with everybody.
He's probably the best at analogies of anybody out there. But anyway, good stuff.
What do you think about? Well,
go ahead. Go ahead.
This tight end that we got, I think he kind of fits our mold, but I would like to see us. So we need someone like Amir to kind of emerge, just to have that threat.
Yeah.
Of him being able to go downfield, because I feel like our guys now they're not much of a threat. They did good blocking, but if we're gonna have the offense like a Shanahan offense or whatever, the reason why his offense works so well is because everybody can kind of like everybody is the threat to do multiple things. So you kind of have to be like simple on defense. Like Debo can go deep or take an end around or get a handoff. Kittle can get an end around. Kittle can block. They got all these guys that can do all these things. We run the same formations, but if our guys aren't multiple in what they're doing, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I know the staff was really, really high on this kid. He was, near the top of their tight end board. 6'6", 257 is Almua. Just somebody I know close to the staff, and they shared his thoughts on it. If you listen to the last pod, about how the staff just raves about this kid, but in his own personal scouting was a well-rounded tight end that can block on the end line and go over the middle and stretch a defense. So certainly I hope that's what we're getting here. And I'm like you, I hope Amir, we do see that this year, him being used, this offense using a tight end in a different way. I think can open some eyes, but it's going to be a focus. Amua talked about what the staff has been telling him and how they use 2 tight ends, and that sounds like it's going to continue to be part of this offense. Maybe, hopefully, not as much with the wide receivers you've also recruited, but certainly I think this staff's really, really high on. But I'm like you. I'd like eventually, and maybe this year is that year with a more experienced Hansen and him working out with receivers more as well, and through another offseason that we do see. And with Lagway at quarterback, a quarterback that can certainly be more efficient down the field if that helps the tight end role open up some too. All right, good stuff, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the. I put it out early for you guys. It'll be out for everybody else soon. But the J. Michael Sturdivant interview, I thought he did really well.
Yeah, he did. He's well spoken. I was wondering how he would respond when you when you read him the scout's take, and the scout was kind of like, yeah, he can. I don't know if he could be a top guy. I was kind of wondering if he would take offense to that, but he handled it well.
Yeah, he did. And then pretty straight.
These kids now, they're so. Go ahead.
Yeah, and pretty straightforward. I asked him about his his production and his stats dropping. Since his day at Cal, and every year at UCLA getting less and less. And he's all about the process. And look, and I brought it up. UCLA went through a tumultuous offseason last year with Chip Kelly decided not to be head coach, bring in a new coach. You don't really have a good quarterback, but he wasn't really pitting it on anybody else, and he had an injury to deal with as well. But he was pretty straightforward of keeping his head down and getting it done.
Yeah, I think he's going to do well for us this year. He's going to surprise some people and find his way into the draft.
Yeah. I've already recorded with Braden Gall. I'm on vacation next week, so do a little bit of prep work. So the Athlon, we talk about the Athlon magazine. It was really good conversation. I'll put that out there for Gators Breakdown Plus members, early access as well, and then for everybody else, probably mid next week. But yeah, J. Michael Sturdivant, I'll release that Sunday night, and then the interview with Braden Gall will probably be next Tuesday or Wednesday. So there's your.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah, Bill.
Hey, if you had to guess right now, where do you have the record after this year?
If I had to guess right now.
Right now, yeah, just based on what we know.
I'm not too far away from making the official prediction, so I don't know.
I got you. I don't want to.
It's at the back of the pod, Dave. No one will hear it.
If you've stuck around this late, you get a surprise. Bill, I am honestly stuck at 9-3. Going both ways with that. 9-3, I see 8-4. 9-3, I can see 10-2. It's just, yeah. I think 9-3 is that. I think that is the sweet spot, and I hope if Florida goes 9-3, it's good enough to get to the playoffs. It's going to be weird, being happy with a 9-3 season because you made the playoff, and then being disappointed by a 9-3 season if you don't make the playoff.
I think 9-3. It just kicks the can down the road a little bit. You have to be happy about that.
Right, you do. But, God, it would sting to miss the playoff.
But then what happens if you go 9-3 again and then Lagway leaves?
Yeah, that's a good point, too. If you go 9-3, if you go 9-3 and what does that say about the schedule if you don't make the playoff? Does that mean the rest of the schedule didn't live up to the expectation? Because I have a hard time seeing if this schedule lives up to its reputation and Florida goes 9-3, that you don't squeeze into the playoff. I'd have a hard time accepting that.
Yeah. I
think it
tend to
just
agree.
depends how it looks.
Yeah.
You know, like if we lose 3 games to teams that end up ranked better than us and we lose close,
Yeah.
I can stomach that. But if we blow one at home or, you know, like we'll lose a game we're not supposed to, it's a different story.
Yeah, lose a game you're not supposed to, or say you lose a game you're not supposed to, and then you get blown out in the other two. Then I could see 9-3 not being good enough. You're right. It does depend on how it looks a lot.
Very interesting season is coming up.
Yeah. This is a polarizing team. They really are.
And with good reason on both sides.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. And we've talked about it. It's most people like the roster and where it's at, and the biggest question is the man on the sideline.
Right.
Definitely, the biggest question is him. I mean, this is his year to prove it. I mean, granted, he's going to get next year. We all know that because it shouldn't be a huge disaster, but it just feels like we're just sitting here, just kind of mediocre, just a little bit, maybe a little bit better than mediocre, and it feels like with a 5-star quarterback, we should. National championship should be in our picture, but it just doesn't feel like we're there yet, and it's all because I still have reservations on Napier, just in general. I mean, he's just kind of been just above average or average, you know, kind of right there on the line.
Yeah, if you're a program like Florida who puts the resources into football like Florida, and you have a 5-star quarterback, expectation should be national championship. Exactly.
We should be. I mean, and I don't know if I could say my expectations are that. I mean, I could say that's what they should be, but I don't think
I know
I have the confidence. Yeah. But anyway, I know it's late.
Good stuff.
Well, the last thing I'll say, man, is, you know I'm not exactly a ray of sunshine about Gator football all the time, but if Lagway is that dude, man, this could be a special season. I mean, it could happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, really. If his legs, I feel like his legs are the key, because you can be simple on offense if you like I said, I was talking about earlier, if you're multiple and you have a quarterback that can keep them honest with the run, you can be simple on offense. Like the Eagles are simple on offense.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just a matter of right. And I like your point about that. And I know you're not saying this, and I want to expand on it. Maybe you can add back in before we go off here. It's not necessarily running like Tebow or running 10, 15 times a game, but when he does take off, they need to be impactful plays. It needs to be.
Yeah, he's just got to be a threat.
Yeah. It needs to be staying out of an interception. It needs to be staying out of a sack. It needs to be, running on 3rd and 6, and he goes picks up 15 yards. That's
keep us from being in long throwing situations, basically. And we saw that, and one thing, I kind of envisioned like when AR had that long run against Utah, we only send a few guys downfield, but if everybody goes downfield and you can get by the line, you got a lot of room to run and stuff,
Man, that done got me all excited. We're still a couple months away.
I will say though, I wanted to mention I was all excited. Then I watched the LSU versus Florida game was on last night, and that we came out that first drive, and it was like false start, and then it was too many men in the huddle, and then it was like nobody open in 3 straight plays. I was just like, oh no, I didn't want to see that.
Well, and still find a way to win though.
Found a way.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thanks for the chat.
Yep,
y'all have a good night.
Go Gators.
Go Gators.
See you guys.